All right, so this will be recorded. If anyone wants to look at it later, they'll be able to look at it. So, well, good morning, everyone. We had an earlier webinar today, and it was by Quan on patents and trademarks and copyrights. And I do see some of the same attendees that are attending here. Welcome, everyone. Just a quick update on the Pismo Ventures Startup Symposium event. We've had really a huge appeal. 182 companies applied to the event. It was really hard to just select 10, so we ended up selecting 12 of them. And those 12 will be pitching this Thursday, which is the day after tomorrow at 12:30 Pacific time. We'll start. So everyone is welcome to attend and meet the investors and hear the feedback, because really part of what we try to do all the time is try to educate entrepreneurs as much as possible. And that's the purpose of this expert panel and the webinars that are happening today. Is we call it Education Day, and it's all complementary to all the startups. So that's really kind of what we try to do, help the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So just a quick note on Pismo: we are a venture firm and also somewhat of an advisory firm for startups, for all the way from when they get started as an ideation, all the way to helping them raise capital, and we invest as well and help them with their strategies. We have a great panel today. Quan will be the moderator, and I will let him take it from here and have all the introductions done. Thanks, Quan. Thanks, Elsa. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Vivek. And thank you, Doug. Quan.
JJ, good to be back. Haven't seen you in a while. I think it's a good 14 minutes from
There
ago.
you go.
So JJ mentioned a panel of experts, and he said, great, I'm going to step one step beyond that. We have a superstar panel of experts in the innovation space. You can look them up on LinkedIn and Google them. They are incredible folks. So JJ, thank you so much for putting on this webinar. It's very helpful I've got a lot of feedback. It's very helpful for our startup community out there. So thank you. All right, so launching straight in, we have Doug. I call him DD, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit after he introduces himself. And there's Vivek, and there's Chuck, and then there is Elsa. So why don't we open up with some introductions, just briefly on me. I'm a patent attorney, been practicing for about 25 years. That's all. So let me go to straight down the list here. Doug, then Vivek, then Chuck, then Elsa. Doug, you want to go first? Just a brief introduction about yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Quan. It's great to be here. And so I'm Doug Sylvester. I'm one of the general partners and founders of Xcellerant Ventures. We are a health sector focused venture capital company located in Scottsdale, Arizona, but investing globally. I personally am a lawyer by training. I'm still on the faculty of the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University, the longest law school name in the world. And I was the former dean of that law school for about 11 years before stepping down a year and a half ago to help found and start Xcellerant Ventures. Really happy to be here and curious to hear what everybody's going to say.
So it's Dean Doug, ergo DD. So there you go. So that's why I call him DD. Okay. Vivek, you're up.
Sure. So hi, everybody. Vivek Kopparthi, co-founder and CEO of NeoLight. We're a medical device company focused on advancing the best-in-class, most empathy-driven products for the newborn care market. We started off with jaundice. We've expanded into retinal imaging for babies, and we just launched a product for sucking in newborn infants, premature babies, right? So high-level stats on the company with about, 50 employees. We sell in about 70 countries across the world. We've got 5 product categories where we've got FDA clearances in. We've done about 40 clinical studies, raised $29 million of capital to date, growing pretty significantly year over year in terms of CAGR revenue, primarily based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we've got a big manufacturing plant in California. Thank you.
So this Vivek, our Vivek, is not running for president, maybe someday. But as of today, he's not running for president. He doesn't bite. He's very friendly. You're free to talk to him. He's not running for president as of today. All right, Chuck, you're up.
Nice to be with you all. Charlie Lewis, I'm at Skysong Innovations, which is the tech transfer arm for Arizona State University. So we protect and commercialize all the new inventions that come out of the university when those inventions are owned by the university, which means you're on the payroll of the university. So when students create something, they own it. When faculty or grad students, postdocs create something, they're getting paid by the university owns it. So we protect and commercialize through license agreements and new startups. Since I've been here, which is 20 years, just hit 20 years, we've launched 210 new startups and 1.3 billion in aggregate funding that's gone into those new startups investment funding.
Thank you, Chuck. When I grow up, I want my hair to regrow like Chuck's there. You know, I'm trying really hard. I'm concentrating, and they're not sprouting yet. I'm hoping that my hair will be sprouting.
What do you mean?
Chuck
look,
soon enough.
Dean Sylvester's your man, Quan. Look at this action he's got going back there.
I think the Manchu is the key to, you got to do this first before. All right, up is Elsa, the most mature and most compositive of all the the teenager at heart folks that we are. So Elsa, you're up.
By mature, do you mean old, Quan? Anyway, so I'm
in composure. In composure.
In composure. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, I was reading the questions that JJ just answered, actually. So would love to learn a little bit more, actually, about the folks on the participants and why they're asking certain questions the way you answered it, JJ. But Elsa Abruzzo, I'm an engineer by training, been in medical devices for about 35 years. Been in just about every area of medical device, from endovascular, interventional cardiology, interventional neuroradiology, orthopedics, some biotech, tissues for transplant, IVDs, you name it. Have regulatory and clinical expertise, and now I am the CEO, since I've done everything, manufacturing, development, you name it, the CEO and president of Anuncia Medical here in Scottsdale, Arizona. And we are part of the Skysong Innovation Center. So know Charlie, and also have been part of the ASU Mayo Clinic MedTech Accelerator. We are a portfolio company of Xcellerant Ventures. We are neighbors to Vivek and good friends, since he is also at Skysong. So it's a tight-knit community, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Elsa. I just want to tell you.
Oh, I'm also an angel investor. Sorry.
and she is as well. So I just want to tell you, I didn't know you could read that. I wouldn't have said, and no, I'm just kidding. Because I thought I was privately replying back to Mohan, but Mohan is in a different business, and that's why I replied that way. So I didn't think he might be able to get help from you, but maybe he does. And if you're open to it, I'm happy to make the introduction.
No worries. I didn't know exactly what business he was in.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the chat, guys.
We'll talk about the chat. Okay, Quan, take it, please, and then we'll discuss that later. Elsa, thanks.
All right. So the last panel, some of you were on, some of you were there. Elsa was on, and I analogized the startup world as starting up a startup is like building a plane while you're in flight. Well, my plane in flight building crashed. That analogy crashed, and people just tore it apart. So I'm going to try something new this time. All right. A startup is like a pack of horses in a raceway, running to win that first place and to break that tape. I think they have a tape. Maybe they don't have a tape, but they, win that race and get funding. And really, if you visualize it, it's like this. You start out with a whole bunch of horses, and they run, and the more laps they do, the more spacing they begin to have amongst them. And then there's a breakout winner in the second and the third, and then you see the spacing that spaces out. Very much so like the startup world altogether. You start out with 2,000. I forget the numbers now, but if anybody has the numbers, share. like 2,000 startups a year, and then they get their first seed funding, and then they follow up and follow up. With every follow-up funding, well, along the way, you need more money. And with every follow-up funding, there are less companies that make it and others just go bankrupt. It's sort of like that spread of the horses, right? So, hey, guys, be kind to me. I'm trying my best with the analogy, but I think that paints a pretty good visual there. And don't crash my plane this time. Okay, so in making it through with the rounds of the horse race, there are many characteristics and many requirements that the team of the jockey and the horse need to have, right? So I'll just list them down, and we'll just start going down through them one by one. The passion of the founders, the traction, the proof of concept, the market size, is it significant or not significant? The product differentiation. Of course, the team members and the communication skills between them, the exit strategies, the numbers, right? And all of that, it's very important. It's a whole package for the winning horse or horses to go through. So we have all of those. That I would categorize as, well, hard matrix for metrics for all intents and purposes. But then there's also the soft skills, the X factor that come in. That's a Jay Leno factor. When he looks at you, you are in his presence, or he is in your presence, and you feel so and so important. I wanted to reserve some time for that as well, because that is actually really important as well. So let's just kick start the race. Let's start the race with let's say product differentiation. Okay, so I'll start it with Vivek. So Vivek, in terms of trying to the one thing I forget, the title of this panel discussion is called Becoming an Investable Startup. So you want to walk away from this webinar with some key messages of what to make sure you have in order to be an investable startup, be that horse, that winning horse at the end. All right, Vivek, product differentiation. Having been through this several rounds now, how do you communicate or set up or identify or make sure that you have product differentiation to communicate with your investors so that they can see and appreciate and invest in you? How do you begin that process? Where do you go? How do you search?
Great question, Quan. Let me start by just take one step behind, right? So for me, when you talk about product and especially product differentiation, I think of it in three buckets, three steps. The first is improvising, and also knowing when to stop. I mean, you could build the best product on the planet, the market's not going to buy it. You could be building the best product today, but then you may face market forces that will probably come and make it harder for you down the lane. So you always have to be improving, improvising, and also know when to stop. That's a very important skill. A lot of passionate founders don't know when to stop. They just go all in, deep into it. And so I think having this fundamental foundation from a point of view of having view ownership and clarity about your product strategy would definitely help. And conveying this in a practical fashion to your investor or your target audience, maybe it's an angel funding organization or it's a grant making organization. Communicating this in a practical, realistic, step-by-step approach is, I think, what it takes for us to get a good product story.
Thank you, Vivek. Let me bounce over to Elsa. In terms of communicating that product differentiation, let's look at the mechanics of it, right? What are the things that you want to show the investors that this is how your product differentiates, that it matters, a meaningful differentiation? What makes up a meaningful differentiation? What are the metrics, mechanics?
So in the medical device world or life science world, a lot of it has to do with IP and protection. Obviously, Quan, you're very familiar with that. So I think it's for us, it's very important that you have patent protection and that you have the ability to have barriers to entry for other products in your space. For us, we've had a lot of products that are incrementally disruptive, right? For us, it's great because there's a couple of things in the medical device world. For example, you have to get through the FDA, and there's different regulatory pathways, right? And so if you're too differentiated, you typically have a much longer regulatory pathway, and investors don't like that, right? So you have to balance, your barriers to entry on the IP side with also your barriers to entry on the regulatory side for medical devices. So you have to know who your audience is in terms of your investors and see what their risk tolerance is. So some want to invest in something that is a large market cap, and they really want that differentiation. They want that disruptive product, and there's a market for that, right? And if you're pitching to that kind of investor, then you make it a point, hey, we got IP, this is the first of its kind, it's revolutionary, it's going to change everything. But there are investors that want, hey, this is got IP, but it is a disruptive, an incremental disruption. It's already covered by reimbursement. There's already adoption there. We just got the best mousetrap there is of that kind right now. And so you have to know your investor, and you have to know how to differentiate your product, depending on their risk tolerance.
Thank you, Elsa. Doug, Dean Doug. So, Xcellerant, you're an investor here. Investors basically want to know how much they're going to make and how long it's going to take for them to make that much. How much, how long? So at Xcellerant, when you look at product differentiation, what do you zoom in on with respect to those two qualifiers? And I assume that those are two qualifiers. I'm sure there are more. Feel free to speak to it, but I'll start there. What do you zoom in on for your mission of the funds that you raise?
Absolutely. So we could, obviously we focus on a lot of different things, but our fund at the moment is a slightly different fund than some others that are out there. And that a lot of what we're looking for are, to Elsa's point, disruptive technologies in the sense that we think they're going to become state of the art if they're on the device side, or if they're on the more patient access side through software, that we think there's something that are going to be rather quickly acquired. So we tend to be looking at later stage companies that either have some or all of their FDA approvals already in line, or already out in the market and have sold. And part of the reason for that is my partners, John and Chris, they're the real stars. I talk a lot, and they're the ones who really know this field inside and out. So when they look at companies, one of the things they're looking for is not just, do you have a great technology? Do you have a great team? It's who would want to acquire you? Who within this market do we think would be an immediate partner for you, either to be one of your top customers or potentially to acquire you down the road? So I know that's a slightly different model than, well, it's actually a radically different model than many are doing, and that we tend not to invest along a power curve approach. We tend to be looking at companies that we think are near guaranteed money makers, and that we can really help turn into acquisition targets and real state-of-the-art technology experts within a very short amount of time. So we're looking for that piece of technology or that market traction, and we're looking for acquisition fit. And that's something that we talk to a lot of our founders about. There's a lot of companies come in, it's my life's work. I want to do this for the rest of my life. And we go, that's fantastic. This would be a great company for somebody else to invest in. That's not our particular thesis. So what I would end with is saying one of the really important parts, and Elsa touched on this, and I'm sure Vivek and others do as well, is know who your investors are and make sure that when you go to talk to them, you have a match with what their thesis is before you walk in and just talk about your technology.
That's right. The whole half part of this panel is that X factor. We'll get to that. All right, Chuck. Really enjoyed our conversation where you spoke about the 80-20, and especially you're at the front row, have a front row seat to seeing these companies being formed. Now, having a lot of a data point like that, the differentiator is important, but also traction, as Doug had mentioned. Traction, what do you see as a pattern of the startups being able to prove up that they've got traction? For example, if they have customers, hey, that's traction. proof of concept that actually something works. So there are two things going on. One, traction is that you have a proof of concept that actually it works. In theory, it should work. I'm differentiating and stuff like that. But if you can't get the system to work, that's not a good thing. So that's traction one. Traction two is that actually the customer side of traction. What pattern do you see from all these data points of all these companies that they can prove up to their investors they've got traction? So please invest in me because I've got traction. Charlie.
You're on mute, Charlie.
That is such a rookie move. I apologize. I think Vivek actually hit on a very good point when he was talking about companies can sort of ideate, create, mature technologies in a vacuum because they think it's a great idea, and they got their relatives who tell them how brilliant they are, but they don't really validate the whole thesis of what they're doing out in the marketplace. So we're huge fans of doing customer discovery work, going out and doing as many interviews as you can with prospective customers to validate the whole idea. Are you solving a real problem? Is it a problem that they think is a problem that you're fixing, or are you improving upon creating more efficiencies of something that they think needs more efficiency in order to make it a more compelling product? So I think, Quan, that is sort of at the very genesis of a company, making sure that you're focused on the right thing, that you've got enough validation in the marketplace just on what your approach is before you start investing time and money and resources into doing it. Now, to your question about traction, the technologies that we deal with here, the new startups that we deal with here, far and away are very early stage. I mean, they're like TRL 1 or 2, right? I mean, there's been maybe some data that's coming out of the lab, something that sort of shows some compelling technology that's protectable, patentable. So if it seems to check the boxes that there could be enough disruption here to make it a potential successful startup, then going to your question about traction, we say, okay, you gotta have money and you gotta have management in order to really execute on this. And in order to do that and attract the money and management, you got to go out there and based upon whatever stage you're at. If you have a prototype, great. If you don't, I mean, get there as quick as you can, because the chances, and we run into this all the time, the chances of attracting money when you don't have at least a functional prototype that proves what you're doing works, then it's like you might as well go to Vegas and play the roulette tables. So that's why we really try to get them focused on scratching and clawing and get to a functional prototype, at least as far as traction. If you could go further than that and get some initial customer interest of saying, hey, if you can build that and do what you say it's going to do, and you'll sell it to me at this price point, I'm in. I'll be your customer. I mean, that's sort of the traction, I think that matters.
Perfect. Thanks, Chuck. Vivek, going back to what you said earlier, and I actually see this a lot, is they keep on inventing. So you build a prototype, it works. All right, you improve it, it's better. And you tweak a few things, it's even better. When do they stop? So the design freeze, I think that's in the industry, that's what we call it. When do you know to invoke the design freeze? Guys, design freeze, we got to move on. Where do we draw that line to that?
Yeah, so let's actually talk about why is it that founders, CEOs, early stage entrepreneurs keep doing that innovation endlessly, right? So it's primarily because of passion, right? So because they are so close to that innovation, they're so close to that idea that they're so excited and they want to see the full potential of it. And let's talk about passion for a second. You know, early stage founders, early companies, young CEOs, inexperienced CEOs, you got a passion will give you a lot of passion will give you a lot of mileage for like 1 or 2 years. But if you've got to have more endurance, you have to pair passion with purpose. And purpose is the fundamental substance, and you have to go deeper inside you and find out what is my identity, what is my purpose, why am I doing this, and that'll sort of give you the clarity on, okay, what is it that fundamentally excites me about this equation. It's not necessarily the technology. Is it the impact? Is it the benefit? Is it the technology, right? So first have that clarity for yourself as you're trying to build this product or technology or innovation. Now going back to your question about when do you stop innovating, when do you pause, you basically do a matrix. I think the goal for any company is to be successful from a point of view of profitability, show traction in terms of revenue. That's the end goal. Walk backwards from there, quantify what is the competitive landscape looking like? What is my ideal product going to look like? What is that delta? Is that delta investable enough? Is that delta valuable enough for me to go after? If I go to a hospital and present my product, which has got that delta over the existing incumbent, is that delta enough for them to pay me $150,000 extra and buy this camera, right? So that is sort of what I think is, it all comes down to quantifying that delta, measuring it against somebody's ability to give you a check. And I mean, in going back to my earlier comment about improving and improvising, it's a step-by-step approach, right? So you build the product to a certain degree when you're a seed stage, and when you're raising a seed round of money. Then for a Series A, you take it a little bit further. Then for Series B, you take it a little bit further. Have a pipeline, sure, but is the basic product you're about to launch, does that have that delta? That is what I think it all comes down to.
Thank you, Vivek. I love the discussion of passion and purpose. A deep soulful search for purpose. And that's why I'm in Mexico, staring at the ocean, trying to find my purpose. So it's not easy. It's not easy.
So there are actually a lot of published work on passion and purpose. And if anybody is interested, listen to Andrew Huberman from Stanford on YouTube, right? So everything he's done is for free. You don't have to pay a lot of money. You don't have to sit in front of a computer and read a paper. You don't have to read these thick textbooks. They just quantify it all for you in podcasts. Amazing work.
Oh, thanks for mentioning that, because I know you have to leave in about pretty soon. And one of the questions that I have for all the panelists is to recommend a blog or a book for inspiration. And so could you repeat that again before you go? The name of that individual?
Sure. It's I think I've got until 12:30. The name of the individual is Andrew Huberman. Andrew Huberman is a professor at Stanford. He interviews a lot of people that only focus on the brain, and his work is amazing. People he interviews is amazing. Anybody that has interest in investing in yourself, because as founders, as CEOs, you have to learn the technical skills, you have to learn the non-technical skills, but you also have to focus on this, right? So how do you build this? How do you build the capacity? How do you have a right mindset? It's a very tough thing to do. You got to have tools to do that. And I get mine from Andrew Huberman.
Vivek, if you can type the name in the chat, that would help, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'll just drop a link to it in the chat window.
Okay. So Vivek, what I picked up from where to stop for a design freeze is you have achieved a purpose. It's good enough that you should just move on and begin manufacturing. The prototyping pretty much should stop at that stage, and no more inventing, because you could spend a lifetime improving things, right? So that's what I hear. In fact, I think Mark Cuban once on one of those Shark Tank things says that perfection is paralysis, and that's true for so many aspects of the entrepreneurial world. Is perfection is analysis. For that invention, you want to perfect it, and then you can't go anywhere because you'll just never get there, and you freeze in a paralysis. Talk about passionate founders. That is important because you need that fuel, right? You need that fuel to propel the company forward. So I'll turn this over to Elsa. So for that fuel, that passion, as an investor, how do you see that the team is passionate enough to a level where you feel comfortable in investing into that company? Elsa, what are your thoughts on them, the startup, showing that they've got passion for this? What do you look at? How do you interview them?
Wow. So, as an investor, I'm looking for, so the passion to me is important, but when I look at an investment, right, I'm also looking, how is this team coming across? Are they coming across professionally? Are they going to be able to raise from other investors? Because you don't want to invest in a company that you're going to be the only investor, right? And a lot of investors feel that way. So you want to have a team that is passionate, yes, but that can get their message across simply, that understands, what the investors are looking for that particular, if it's an angel group, they are going to be early stage. It's fine that you're early stage, but what do you look for? You look for something that is differentiated, like you said, that has some proof of concept, right? And so you want a team that knows how to communicate that simply and understands what that investor wants. You also want a team that's, even though they're passionate, right? Because you want them to be able to show, hey, we're in it for the long haul. We're really excited about it. We're going to be working really hard for you to make you money. But, that a team that listens and that has listened to their customers. For example, for the, when do you stop iterating? When do you, if you got to go to your customers, your advisors, and take their feedback and be able to communicate that. He goes, why am I going to invest in you? Because, we've gone out there, we've talked to, I don't know, 20 neurosurgeons, and we've looked at the market and we've done this analysis. So having that prep, right? When you talk to investors, so back your passion up with facts and with simple, easy to understand, metrics for your investors. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Elsa. One of the other things to back up with facts is to tell the story about you, the company. And I've been lucky enough to actually hear some of these podcasts. Well, actually, it was a live session, and they had their podcast where they say, do storytelling about yourself, and that from there you can exude passion. So, Chuck, have you seen other companies? Have you seen where the startups would tell stories? For example, an easy one is if there's a loved one or themselves, they had cancer of some sort, or they have some sort of some very, very pressing matters at hand, and they are dedicated. They have dedicated their lives to turning this around, and that shows some passion. Have you seen patterns of that with the 200 plus companies that you've seen that have been successful in using storytelling to show passion, and how did they do it?
So just a quick just one quick comment, Charlie. So when I was just an idea, Charlie taught me how to build my story, and he taught me how to channel my passion and put it into a box and present, right? So he's the best person. I'm living example of his work.
Well,
also, Charlie, just real quick, just what came to mind when we were part of the Accelerator was the company that won the pitch competition, and his story about his mom and being at the bar. I thought that was fabulous, and I think that's what really got everybody. So I don't know if you.
I want to point out, I've known Charlie for 20 years. He's done nothing for me. I just want to let everybody know that.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts, Doug. Yeah, put yourself on mute and keep it there. Don't go out of mute again. Well, thanks, Vivek, and Elsa, for your comments. I have seen that, Quan, for sure, because it humanizes your pitch, because it's sort of, technology is an esoteric thing. People look at it, they try to understand, like, is that something that really has value or not when they're listening to your pitch. But if you can somehow personalize it through a real life story, whether it's your own, it's your family, it's somebody you put a face on it, and you tell the story. I think that is a very successful way of selling, in general. Although I will say, this is the cynic in me, Quan, is that it's become so popular. I mean, I see it very often now. And when I see people doing their storytelling, I am now at a point where I go, oh, that's just BS. They're just making that thing up. That's not really. So what it comes down to, seriously, is the delivery. You have to deliver the story with a passion. Because if you just get up there and go, this is my neighbor, lived 2 streets down, and, they got cancer, and we're working on this thing, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's not believable. What makes a story believable is when you're delivering the personal storytelling with passion. I mean, you really have to convey that. It's almost like being an actor. I mean, you have to, and hopefully it's genuine and it's a real story, but you have to deliver it in a way that it resonates with the audience, with the listeners.
Thank you, Chuck. So I'm going to rescue Doug and pull him out of mute. Doug, you, once upon a time in the glory days, you were a litigator. And being a litigator, you have to be able to be a judge of character. When someone is saying something that is not genuine, what do you see the difference between someone who's telling something that's genuine and would be convincing to a jury, which are the investors in this case, and something that just doesn't click right? And it's hard to define, it's hard to quantify, and it's hard to characterize. But in general, what's your gut feeling? Can you point to anything at all? I'm not sure if I can. It just feels that way, the sixth sense, that they're genuine and they're for real, as opposed to just, this is what I got to do. I was told to do storytelling, that's what I'm doing. What is the difference between a good one and a bad one?
My mother used to tell me it takes one to know one. And so I think I really can tell when somebody's not being genuine, because I live that life in so many different ways. I actually think Charlie's point, first of all, I should take back. Charlie has been at Skysong for 20 years. The number of companies that have come through, the people that he has outlasted in that place has become unbelievable in great measure because of Charlie's persistence and resilience and a willingness to help other people. I really think it comes down to, I will say this, I'm going to back up what Charlie said, running admissions. It's become de rigueur nowadays that if you try and apply to go to law school, you've experienced some tragedy. When you start reading your 7,000th tragedy application, you start to really figure out whether or not there's some real basis to it. And there's really, look, the acting is part of the problem. And we've talked about this before. I really believe that you have to be able to do a really great pitch for us to fund you. Now, part of the reason for that is, we have 1,000 applications, we've had like 300 pitches, and we've invested in 10 companies. At some point, your ability to pitch is incredibly important. But from a psychological perspective, it's actually not a great proxy for determining who's going to be the greatest founders, who's really going to have that resistance and persistence. It's not absolutely essential that you have to be able to pitch, but you have to be able to show that passion in a way that resonates. So one of the things I'm going to say is, if you are a tremendous actor, good for you, right? Like, if you can actually tell me a story that's not fully true, but it conveys why your product is great, it conveys why you have the passion to really take that company and move it forward, you fooled me. I'm actually got no complaints, because it shows you can sell. Now, at the same time, when somebody shows up and they tell a story, I want to reach back to something Elsa said about going out to experts and backing up your story with data. Well, guess what? Before we invest, we reach out to those same people to find out if it's true. We're also doing our own research to determine whether you really have customers. Is this actually being used? Have people found this to be an efficacious project? So we know at some point whether there is BS, even if you fooled us in those 3 minutes. So the long story really is, who cares whether I can tell if you're cheating or not? Tells whether that story is real. We're going to really look deeper into the product, deeper into the company, to determine whether we really think there's a fit between what you're doing and what the market needs. And the passion isn't actually as important to me, quite frankly, as the resilience to be able to keep moving your product and your company forward. Because even if you're going to sell in 2 or 3 years, it's a tough 2 to 3 years to go from any moment to getting that company sold. So that's what I think we'd look for more than passion and storytelling. But if you can tell it and fool us, I have no problems with that.
I got a tag team on here, Quan, with what Doug just said. The two people I thought of when he was talking was Adam Newman, WeWork, that just filed BK here a week ago, and Elizabeth Holmes over at Theranos, right? I mean, they're master salespeople. I mean, look, WeWork tanked. He's already got, another 100 million lined up, venture funding, right? Horowitz and what is it, A to Z 20, whatever their fund is. But anyways, these are master salespeople. So the lesson in all of this, if you're a female entrepreneur, is you have to be able to channel Steve Jobs. Do the Steve Jobs voice and wear your black turtleneck, and that'll let you raise money, just like she did. Doesn't matter if you have a product or not that works. Just you got to channel Steve Jobs.
So true, so true. So I'm going to take a poll across our panelists here, 1 to 10. Okay, 1 is you totally agree. I'm sorry, 10 is you totally agree, and 1 is like, I don't agree. So it's related to passion. It's the skin in the game, right? So skin in the game is where, for our audience out there, is when the founders put in their own money, and that shows passion, that shows dedication, that shows that they believe in their mission. Let's say that they put in a significant amount, let's say, $100,000 into the venture. And so from a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that you see that, hey, you know what, this is a data point that's convincing that they've got skin in the game, they put in their own money, they're passionate enough about this, it moves the needle for you. So I'll start with Doug. Does it move the needle for you, 1 to 10, that this is a company that you'll seriously consider because they chunk in the $100,000 for themselves? 1 to 10.
That's a 1 for me.
That's a 1 for you. Reason?
Yeah. Number one, it knocks out way
1?
too many inventors and founders who are incredibly brilliant and smart and don't have their own individual resources to move forward. It would basically stop almost every first-time founder from being funded by us. What we want to see is, that they've got their own blood, not blood equity, but at least sweat equity in the job, and that they're showing a real passion and resilience to move that company forward. But monetary input for me, if you've got the money, great for you. It's not going to be a game changer. It's not going to move the needle for me one bit. And I'm actually kind of opposed to it as a proxy for passion and resilience.
Okay, Vivek.
I've never had
1
any
to 10.
I've never had any money to invest, so I have no clue. But I 100% on the same page with Doug. I think there are absolutely so many ways for us to show commitment and skin in the game. Money is putting your own money into it is a lowest form of it. There are much bigger ways to show commitment and skin in the game and dedication.
Okay, so that's a 1 for Doug.
Actually,
1 for Vivek.
I'd like to ask Vivek to follow up on that. Could you tell us some ideas of what those may be? Because most investors are looking really for cash.
I was so dedicated to doing what I was doing that I ran out of my visa. I got deported to India, and ASU helped me to come back and go pursue my idea, right? So I declined. All my friends have high-paying jobs. I declined every job offer that I had on the table. I used to go roam around all of Charlie's events, scrapping for free food across every across every event at Skysong. I mean, the goal is not about proving you personally. I think you don't have to put money in or do anything fake. If you are authentic in yourself, right? So if you're really passionate, if there's a real drive innately, it will show up. There are so many ways of that showing up. There's not one particular format. Those are 2 routes I can give you immediately that I've used. Or that as well.
Getting deported is certainly one of them. Chuck,
Thanks,
Chuck, 1 to 10, Chuck. Money, does that speak to you? Does it move the needle?
I'm pretty low too. Maybe not 1, maybe 2 or 3. And the reason is I do feel like if they've got, and it's all relative too, based upon whatever their means are, how much are they putting in? But if it's something meaningful relative to what their actual reserves are or wealth is, they're it does check that box that they're probably going to be less inclined to throw in the towel. But that doesn't do anything to address the issues of the competency, the technology, the problem they're solving, all that stuff. So it's pretty low for me, but it's a little bit higher than a 1.
Okay. All right. So with Elsa, I'll ask that same question. And also I'll tag on another question and I'll go in reverse with the polling again is, okay, so it seems like the dollar amount, half their saving, whatever, that is not a big consideration. So the second question I'll ask Elsa as well is the full-time position, quitting their daytime job and going at this full-time, that is full dedication as I can see it, taking the full risk there. So 2 questions for you then, Elsa. One is, does it move the needle for you that they put in their money, half their saving, whatever it is? And the second question is, okay, if that doesn't move the needle for you, then is the fact that they're full-time in it, they quit their day job, is that important for you? The first question first, money. How important is that for you, moving the needle for you for investing?
So I'm pretty much where Charlie is. It depends on whether the person has the means, and so it is not everything. It would not compensate. Like Doug and Vivek said, and even Charlie, for competency and the story and everything else. But yeah, if I do think it does check some boxes for investors that they're not, like Charlie said, going to throw in the towel. And I was going to mention, as Vivek did, these opportunity costs, right? And I think that a full-time job versus, still doing your other work and having, your business part-time and your startup part-time does show that commitment and that opportunity cost. I think for me, that's really important. I didn't get deported. I am a naturalized citizen from Cuba. I am a US citizen now, but I can tell you that I gave up a very lucrative consulting business where I was making more than double what I'm making as a CEO and with a steadier paycheck. And that shows commitment, right? And so I do think that these opportunity costs and use, showing investors that you're in it, and you are, committed to your business. I mean, you got to give somebody confidence. If it's, if you haven't invested and you can, and you haven't gone full time, what are you telling investors? Well, I don't believe in this that much, right? So I do think that's important.
Thank you, Elsa. I would. Can
I say one thing real quick? So
yes, please.
We in our office we interface with a lot of. I mentioned that we protect and commercialize all the university-owned technologies, but we also interface and support and help on the student side as well whenever we can. And Vivek's a classic example of this. Of coming out of school, trying to make the decision: do you go down the sort of employment route, get a job, leverage your education, or do you have that burning passion on the entrepreneurial side? And the thing that when I'm in front of students in whatever classes at the university, that I always sort of mention is based on empirical data that we see all the time, is that it is inevitable. It's going to take longer and cost more money than you think it's going to take before you're in the market. There's this naivete of thinking, yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to go out and start a company, and then you're a couple months into it and they're like, okay, where's my first paycheck? And it doesn't work that way. So the pain that Vivek went through is a poster child, I think, of how long it took to get into the market, to be into revenue. And the reason I bring it up is I always advocate to students, if you have an entrepreneurial passion, don't be supported. I fully support it, but don't be dependent on that for your source of income. Try to get your thing going as a side hustle while you're developing it, while you're getting validation, while you're building it out, all those kinds of things where you're mitigating the risk of going out and saying, okay, I'm quitting my job. I'm not going to take a job. I'm going to be all in on this. It's just, I mean, that is misguided passion to me. It just doesn't make sense doing something like that. So Vivek, tell them the pain you went through.
Please.
Oh, no.
So here's a question, a more specific question. So going in all in, what I'm hearing is important because it convinces the investors that you're for real. Now the startup, especially young people, they can be well-intended, but probably delusional in some way. And when they hit that delusional point of realization, man, I'm gonna have a family soon. I got a baby on the way. So, and they still want to do this. What do you recommend as a mechanism to support themselves? And I'll tell you one real quick, 30 seconds. So a friend of mine, wanted to got his PhD and went to do some postdoc, hated it, went back, asked the professor, hey, I want to do something. The professor gave him a side project. While supporting that project, raising a company, he went Ubering, and he talks about his company, and then he talked about his company to one of the Uber customer who was his first customer. He has now raised $50 million. They've got a facility that's like, I don't know, 1,000 square feet or something like that. They're manufacturing. They are in the market, and this is only within 4 years, right? So Ubering is one way. So let's talk about mechanism for being tactical for our audience out there. What are some of the support that the startups can get when they're well-intentioned and they want to do this? Where do they find support to survive and to live a normal life, to feed themselves? Vivek, where can they find money for food? What kind of support can they get, and where?
I think money for food is the easiest solvable thing. Most of the pain, the reasons these startups go through this pain is because of lack of experience. If I had known back then what I know today, I would have compressed that gap by a lot, right? So I'd already supported myself. The best way for you to hack that gap is to support yourself with people. With experience. Experience is not something you can read overnight in a book. It is just practically impossible. I'm pretty sure if you're an entrepreneur, you will be creative enough to figure out a way for you to put food on the table and go feed your family. That's the easy part. The tough part is having the skill set and the competence to take an idea into a product and go through whatever barriers you need to get. The time that it takes for you to do that needs to be as short as possible. That's the most painful period, and you can only do it if you support yourself with the right people.
Okay, so finding the right people. A little bit deeper into that. Right people. I know you have about 4 minutes. Hard stop. Tell the audience. Right people. Who are helpful for your journey as a startup entrepreneur?
Is it just me, or is he cutting out for everybody?
Yeah, he was cutting out.
Repeat the question, Quan.
I think Vivek, he's asking you to go deeper into the question of what you mean by 3 minutes right people.
So
yes. So I think it's right people in the right seat at the right time, right? So I mean, I'll give you a personal example. NeoLight, we went through an ideation stage, product development stage, clinical trial stage, manufacturing, and then commercial. Where these are 5 different teams with different skill sets, with different operating mindsets. So we had to go through 5 different sets of advisors, 5 different sets of teams to get to where we were in a very short span of time. So just quantify what phase are you in, what are the end goals, what is the talent you have, what is it that you don't have, and then go out into the market and ask them. The interesting thing about NeoLight is every time I've asked for help, Quan, I've always gotten it. Every time I've raised my hand, I've always gotten it. And I think you will be helped as long as you deserve it, like Dumbledore from Harry Potter, right? So you will absolutely be helped if you deserve it. You've got to work hard to deserve it. I think that's what it comes down to. All right, I got to run. But thank you for inviting me to the panel. JJ, you're probably going to moderate it from now on.
I know, yeah, he'll come back. He's had a couple of issues coming, with the internet.
That's the downside of
Mexico.
Yeah, that's the downside of being in the ocean.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Well, thank you, Vivek, very much. Much appreciate your comments and input.
Yep. Thank you.
Take care.
Give Vivek.
So while we're waiting for Quan, who's joining, I did want to point out, because there was a question or there was a comment about leveraging students and university as a resource and all that. That has been very helpful for us too. We've been able to work with Arizona State University, and as part of being part of different accelerators, which are open to a lot of startups, right? You can go ahead and get free resources. Also tapping back into your mentors, in your career, whether that be your professors if you're a student, or previous CEOs or bosses that you've had. I've been very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time in many situations with startups that did make it and were acquired. And some of those CEOs are on my board now, and I'm very fortunate for that. But yeah, students, universities, grants, family and friends, and setting yourself up. If you know that you're going to quit, to do this full time, have a backup plan. You either don't need a lot, and so you can quit because you know that you're not going to make a lot of money, or if you need that, you have to rely on your family members or whatever other situation. So, but there are a lot of resources out there. There are also, economic development areas, different local grants, angel investors. So there's a lot of different ways that you can maybe not put food on the table, but put some money into the company, during these early phases. So.
Quan, are you back? Somewhat. Somewhat back.
You hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit. Okay, we lost them. All right, so maybe we'll piggyback on what Elsa said, and Charlie, can you? I guess you're quite involved in that as well, it seems like, and Doug being the dean or a former dean as well. So you think leveraging the university students is a good I guess strategy for startups, although kind of going back on what Vivek said, is you need that experience and you need to shorten that that gap as much as possible. You think it is a good idea to use I guess interns from universities?
No, I'm a huge fan of student exploitation. There's no doubt about that, because they're trying to get real world experience. All they are is in the classroom right now. They love to do this kind of stuff because it's good for their resume. Even if they have no entrepreneurial aspirations themselves. So I think it's a really good resource. Now, you want to be selective because there's quite a spectrum on students, and the knowledge they bring, as well as their gumption to really get it done. But I think we have nine interns in our office, and we're a small office. We only have 22 people, but we have 9 interns that do a lot of scouting for us. And just like Jeff Bennett said here in his thing, he said they use 5 MBA students. I think that's great. Branding, customer project. They delivered 120 plus slide deck. So Jeff, my recommendation for you is to take that 120 slide deck and get it down to about 8 to 10, because nobody's going to listen to a 120 slide presentation, unless Doug, you want to sit there and listen to a 120 slide presentation.
Nobody wants to do that. Yeah. I mean, we always say 15 would be max, right? So
well, let me talk a little bit about that too, JJ. So like at the law school, before becoming dean, this was my area of law. So one of the reasons I ended up at Xcellerant is through the law school, we started a technology ventures clinic that now has evolved to reach out to the general public, helps you start your company, think about basic structure, does legal documents for you, connects to business students. We also created patent clinics that can help file your patents, depending on the nature and extent of the technology that you're working with. But the point I want to make is actually to emphasize more strongly that you're doing a favor to the students more than they're doing a favor to you.
I think that's true.
That's the mistake. I don't want people to think, oh my God, this is free labor. You're doing them the favor. You can get some real value. There's some brilliant students. There's some real project work that can get done, but it can't be that you're farming things out to undergraduates or even graduate students in law school where you really think you're getting the equivalent work you would. If you want to really build a great company, use students, have them be involved, but remember, you're helping them. You still need to go out and find the real experts, find people with real experience to make sure that you're on the right path from the very, very start. Because the number of companies that just get off on that wrong foot and they can't fix it is incredibly high. And so, one of the things I would say is maybe you can't afford to put your own money in it, but you've got to find a way to convince real experts to get involved in your company to put you on the right path as early as humanly possible.
Can I go back to
you get what
it's a balance of, so the students really are a workforce, right? And we hire a lot of those students that intern and co-op for us in our company. Because by that time you've trained them, right? and they've given you, what you needed, but they've learned, and now they're better, right? So, but it's those mentors and advisors, and there are a lot of accelerators and incubators. Chris, one of your partners, has one, and the Mayo ASU, and there's Creative Destructive Labs, and there's tons of them. There's some for women, female founders. I was part of that, in Boston, and I met a lot of my mentors through my work experience, and folks that I went back to and said, hey, can you help me with this? Can you give me some guidance? Will you be part of my board? But also, through these accelerators, you meet, and through, these kind of programs too, right? These venture programs and whatnot, you meet these folks that you could say, hey, there was somebody, on the chat that said, hey, I heard that you're a regulatory expert in medical devices. Will you help me out? And he reached out to me already on LinkedIn. And so you meet these people and you reach out to them, and, maybe some won't help you or have the time, but some will. Right. And, and if they're doing these webinars and being entrepreneurs and residents for these accelerators and grants and things like that, they want to help, right? They're here to give back, right? Because they've been helped in the past. At least that's how I feel. And so do take advantage of that. So it's a balance of, there's a lot of students out there because, there's a lot of work, right? And that's, cheap labor. And as Charlie said, they're getting a lot out of it as well, like Doug said. So, but there are also a lot of experienced people in some of these programs that can help you as well.
Quan, you back?
Thank you, Elsa. This is Quan again. Yes, I'm back. Thank you, Elsa. This is Quan. I'm back. Thanks for your patience with me, guys. I put myself on camera shy so that I can save bandwidth and actually stay on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, you can tell that our panelists are experts and superstars because they can carry on without the moderator. So that's self-evidence. Guys, I wanted to talk about the X factor, and actually I wanted to spend about half an hour on it, but we had so much to cover on the front end. So let's just turn to that real quickly, and I'm going to pick on Doug. So I had a friend who took a flight class, and when he to pass or complete his hours, they cut a hole in the back of his jacket. So Doug is wearing, I think it looks like a pilot jacket. I don't know if he has a hole, but if you do have a hole back there, Doug, we don't want to see it, right? So, but anyways, it's a cool jacket, so you're a cool dude. The X factor, it's one of these things, it's a personality thing. You got to be approachable and things like that. There's no way to quantify it. It's just, you know it and you feel it. And so just for the audience, the X factor is that when you're in the presence of someone like Jay Leno, he's known for this, is that when you're in his presence, you feel important. You feel you're heard. So Doug, what do you recommend for our audience out there to either hone that skill or to be more serious about that skill for investors, so that way they can capture the best of the audience from the investors? What do you think? Where do they start? How do they hone this skill?
Well, I mean,
X factor.
Sure. And I think Charlie, again, we can praise you, Charlie, which I never thought I'd do in my life, that, you've got these resources at universities and through accelerators and in government entities like the, General Phoenix Economic Council or the Arizona Commerce Authority here in our state. I know every other state has them. And the only way you do it, as a former lawyer and professor, I coached moot courts for many, many years. And one of the answers is you have to just do it. Nobody steps up the first time that they got in front of somebody and has the confidence to immediately be able to hold that room and convey very complicated subjects and to get people really excited about what they're excited about. It's really about practice, 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 and failing. I think it's one of the most common things you'll hear about venture and startups in the world is you got to fail 5 times to really figure out how to do it right. Hopefully you don't fail with our money, but you can fail in small ways and just do it better the next time. So, I'll start it off. I'm sure other people can add a lot more, but the main thing for me, Quan, is just you need to really do it. You can't just sit in a room, come up with a great idea, and hope the first time you get in front of some potential investors, you know exactly how to do it. And so looking for resources and mentors, which I think we've stressed this entire hour, is really the key to making sure that you've got the kind of skill set that's going to make you take advantage of the opportunities when they arise. One of the questions that came up was somebody who's been really struggling to find some venture capital funding. And my answer is it's a difficult world, but when you get that opportunity, you get in front of somebody, you want to make sure you do it right. And the only way to do that is practice, practice.
Thank you, Doug. Chuck, can you share with the audience what we talked about in that 20% of the companies get 80% of the funding, et cetera. So it really goes to show that if they've got this right, that their horse is going to be way ahead. In terms of X factor, the ability to connect, the ability to make the investors feel heard, how has that played into this? First of all, talk about the 2080 that you've been observing through the years of the investment world, and how does X factor go into that gives them that edge of being that 20?
Yeah. So I had mentioned at the beginning that our startups have raised 1.3 billion in the last 20 years, and that's what Quan is referring to, and the 80-20. So it hasn't been an equal distribution by any means across all the 200 plus startups. It's 80% of the money has gone into 20% of our startups. So I think what you're asking, Quan, is what's the X factor for those 20% that have raised the 80% of the 1.3 billion. And
exactly.
Yeah. So I think I shared with you, Quan, when we spoke the other day, that one of the venture funds that we deal with, they're I'd call them a mid-tier fund. They have they're on their 3rd fund, and I think they have 800 million under management. So they're pretty accomplished. They've been around for a while, and so I was talking to one of the partners, and so we were just talking about the criteria that they look at when they're in the course of their due diligence of considering an investment. And so I said, how do you guys rank order? What in your checklist? And she said, it's evolved. She said over the years. She said it's really interesting because now we put as much emphasis, if not more emphasis, in the leadership of the company, the CEO of the company, and the top leadership in the company, primarily the CEO, as opposed to the technology. And she said the technology has to check the boxes of disruptive, big market, multi-billion-dollar market, blah blah blah, all that stuff. But she said we would all day long invest in a superior CEO and an above average technology versus an above average CEO and a superior technology. And I found that pretty interesting because her rationale was, if you get that superior CEO, and usually it's evidenced by them successfully having done something in the past, not always, but that's usually a pretty good indicator. She said they will always figure a way when they run into the problem to go around it, to go over it, to go under it, whatever it takes, pivot as necessary in order to solve the problem. She said that's where we want to put our money, because when you start out early with your company, it's inevitable that you're going to pivot because you think you understand all the market dynamics and your customers and your product and what they're looking for, but you usually end up having to pivot. And she said, we want the right CEO and leadership who's going to, be able to lead the pivot, recognize the need to pivot and execute on it. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth, Quan, that's what she said.
That's worth a lot for $800 million talking. I'm sure she put her money where her mouth is. That's fantastic. So guys, we have about a couple of minutes, actually 1 minute left. And so JJ, there are two questions, I think. JJ, would you like to ask our panelists what are the two questions so we can take care of it for them?
Certainly, yeah. And thanks, Doug. And I don't know if anyone else was answering the other questions. That was really great. So one question is, what is the right time or the right circumstance or even criteria to decide that a startup need or should have investment? I think Charlie kind of answered that to some extent, saying, get as much as you can, get your MVP, get some traction, get some demand, and then it's probably better then to go and raise capital. But anyone.
Well, so and Doug, you can follow on, but there's different types of raises, right? You always start out with, if you're coming out of a university or things like that, you typically get grant money and you fund it with grants and local help and things like that. Then friends and family. Then you go out to angels for some seed. And by then you have to have some of that traction, proof of concept, some stuff once you start going to angels. Then you go to VCs, then you go to bigger VCs, then you go to PE and M&A. And so it depends on the stage. And to what Charlie also said, and the $800 million, PE or VC fund is, you may not be the CEO that takes that to a series A or a series B. You may be the CEO that gets it to seed funding, and you may still be part of the team, but there's different needs at different stages, just like there's different funding sources for different stages. And I work with a company. The guy who's the CTO was actually the founder, and he came in and he raised a lot of grant money and propelled his company, and then he hired a CEO. And that CEO took it to a certain stage. And that CEO actually is now the president and runs the company operationally. But there's another CEO because they're raising, $40 million. And that wasn't the CEO to raise $40 million. This other guy who's more marketing. And so, I do think that, a good CEO has to be resilient and resourceful and be able to solve problems. But, if you're raising, over $10 million or $15 million, that CEO has to know how to pitch, has to know how to, has to have that credibility and that cloud to syndicate and run the company in that way. They may not be the one that is operationally running that company, right? So, it just, get money when you can get it. But note that you have different bars at different times, whether for the team or for the raise.
Yeah, thanks, Elsa.
True that. Thank you.
I was going to say, I don't really have much to add. I think you've covered it. I'm a law professor by training. And so the answer is always, it depends. Go and talk to experts, figure out whether you think the time is right. I just can't stress enough how incredibly, I think, embracing this community is among startups and founders, that if you find that community, go to events, go to cafes where people hold these kinds of events, network with people, you will find experts that will help you think through those very, very individualized and specific questions. There is no general answer for when or why you would do these sorts of things.
You're absolutely right. I think, and it's not
the-
only in Arizona, it's everywhere that
Yes,
I've been.
I think it's bigger in other places than Arizona.
Yeah.
We're just starting.
I know.
So,
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, here, Southern California, it's amazing as
Yeah.
well. It's very, very vibrant, and everyone is willing to help. Really.
go to networking events. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Doug, Chuck, and Elsa, this is gold. I hope the audience out there is soaking it in. This is really valuable information. I know, Doug, you have to run to another event so you can moderate.
do,
So let
unfortunately.
me see if we can just wrap this up real quick. If you can just make a suggestion for the audience to either listen to a podcast or some book for inspiration
Sure.
in this. So I'll start with Elsa. Do you have one that you can recommend to the
Juan,
audience?
I gotta go. So let me go first because I have to go moderate a
Okay.
panel right out there in about 30
You go.
seconds. So what I would say really
Okay.
quickly is one of the great podcasts of all time for anybody interested is The Full Ratchet. It's been on for about 12 years, so you're going to get some old stuff there, but it breaks down the whole idea of how you find funding. It's a really great resource from a lot of different perspectives, starts very foundationally and grows. And then from a book perspective, ASU has a number of little hidden gems. One of them is Charlie's, it turns out. The other one is, yes, we all get #1 in innovation tattoos. The third is Robert Cialdini, is really one of the most brilliant psychologists in the world. He has a great book called Influence. If you can't influence people through sort of psychological and speech techniques, you can't sell your product. You're not going to get investment. With that, thank you so much, JJ and Quan, for having me on. I really got to run. And thanks to the entire audience for being there. It was great. And to answer one question, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, email me anytime. Happy to try and help you with any questions you have. Have a great day, everybody. Sorry to talk so fast.
Thanks, Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Elsa, recommendation.
Wow. So I'm not much of a podcast person. And lately, I don't have a lot of time to read. I envy my husband. He's always got earphones on and listening to podcasts and books on tape and stuff like that. So I did Google, and there are tons of sites that talk about like top podcasts for startup founders. And there was like 20 of them. And they looked really cool. And I go, oh, I wish I had time to do that. So I'm going to put a shameless plug for a podcast that I'm on that was through Doug's partner at Xcellerant. He has Entrepreneur RX, and he interviews folks from industry and positions because that happens to be a life science. His name is John Schufelt, and it's called Entrepreneur RX. And John Schufelt is you think Doug is an overachiever. John Schufelt is a ER/MD with a JD and MBA, and is a pilot and an investor and a successful entrepreneur. And so I think he has a lot of wisdom to share. But to me, the biggest thing is, if you want to learn, go to these events, be part of an accelerator, network a lot. And sometimes your resources are hidden gems. Like, for example, one of the folks that introduced me to John Schufelt went out and found him because he found him on a Phoenix, Business Journal article, was one of our attorneys. And he's connected me with a lot of folks. Or you join an organization, in our case, Arizona Bio, AZ Bio, and that person connects you. Become involved, volunteer, network, meet these people, attend these things. To me, you learn more from real life stuff, and like Doug and Charlie said, failures, and just doing it. So
Awesome. Thank you, Elsa. Chuck, recommendations.
Yeah, mine probably goes back in the archives a little bit too, but it's been around for a while. But it's just, I think it's so important for the reasons I mentioned earlier about, if they think your company, it's always going to take longer and cost more money before you're where where you're making money and in revenue and everything. So I recommend Lean Startup if you haven't read it. Eric Rice. I mean, it kind of gets you down to the fundamentals, so you're not wasting time and money and energy.
Perfect. Thank you, Charlie, Elsa. Thank you so much. JJ, I think we can call it a wrap. We're 8 minutes over time. I think we can call it a wrap now. What do you think?
That's all good. This was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the information that was given today should be really gold for everyone that's been on this call. It's really great. Elsa just posted something. That's really great. Thanks, Elsa. Go ahead.
Somebody asked about the podcast chat, so I just
Oh, there you go. Okay. Well, thank you, Charlie, very much. Thanks, Elsa, and Doug and Vivek as well. They're not here. Quan, you are an excellent moderator, although you're not on video, but you're still good. So thanks for there you go. Thanks very much for doing this. You know, we all give back, and this is really part of giving back and really educating the community. And I could tell you, I'm receiving LinkedIn messages and private messages from a lot of people here saying this was really fantastic. So I very much appreciated. Thank you very much, all of you. Don't go away. 5 minutes or so, there's another event for all the attendees. It's a webinar by Ken August, talking about the mistakes that you should not make from a legal standpoint. All right. Thank you all very much. Talk soon.
Guys, yeah.